And it coincides with a period of record net legal migration. Mass immigration not only makes it tough for young people to get a house, absolutely right to be. They're also angry economically. We are getting poorer. You know, if you look at the last 8 quarters, GDP per capita is falling in 6 of them.
Did you see the moment Nigel Farage left Laura Kuenssberg speechless on live television? The BBC presenter's face said it all as Farage systematically dismantled each loaded question thrown his way. What started as a typical establishment ambush turned into a masterclass in media navigation.
You know, the reopening of the debate around the, well, they call it the grooming gang scandal, but it's not, it's the mass rape scandal. I just think people ask themselves, what has happened to our country?
People here we've spoken to this afternoon, though, seem to be coming to you because they're very angry. They're very angry about the state of the country. Do you think that's what it's about?
As they should be. As they should be. How could this possibly have happened? Why did everybody want to cover it up? Why has there been no full public inquiry? People are angry about that, yes, and they're right to be.
Farage not only stood his ground on British steel and immigration, but exposed the very bias that millions of viewers have long suspected from our national broadcaster. Stay tuned to see exactly how he turned the tables. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great! Thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
Not only makes it very difficult to see a GP, not only makes our roads and infrastructure struggle to cope, it's making us poorer. And I think the anger isn't directed at the Labour or Conservative parties. I think people increasingly regard them as a uni party.
What happens when the establishment's favourite interviewer meets her match? We witnessed this rare spectacle as Laura Kuenssberg's carefully orchestrated plan to corner Nigel Farage disintegrated before our eyes. While the BBC marketed this as just another Sunday morning political chat, behind the scenes a different strategy was brewing, one designed to catch Farage off guard and undermine his credibility. The BBC's approach was transparent to anyone paying attention. Rather than engaging in genuine political discourse, Kuenssberg came armed with a series of calculated traps, particularly on British steel, a topic selected not for its relevance, but for its potential to make Farage appear uninformed. When Farage spoke about Chinese ownership within the British steel industry, Kuenssberg pounced, attempting to frame his claims as baseless assertions rather than legitimate concerns about foreign influence in critical infrastructure. Most revealing was Kuenssberg's body language and tone throughout the exchange. Viewers noticed how she repeatedly interrupted Farage when his responses didn't align with the narrative the BBC wanted to present. This wasn't accidental. It's a common tactic used to control the conversation and prevent guests from fully articulating their positions, especially when those positions challenge mainstream perspectives. Farage's response to the British steel questioning showcased his commitment to economic nationalism, a stance that directly contradicts the globalist worldview that dominates BBC coverage. When he stated, "There is no reason why we can't manufacture our own steel, there's no reason why we can't produce aluminium or do refining, there's no reason why we can't do any of these things." He was articulating a vision of national self-sufficiency that clearly resonated with viewers tired of seeing British industries hollowed out. The stark contrast between Kuenssberg's aggressive approach to Farage and a noticeably softer handling of establishment politicians didn't go unnoticed by the audience. While other political figures routinely received gentle, almost deferential treatment, Farage faced a barrage of interruptions and challenges. A double standard that only reinforced the perception that the BBC was more interested in discrediting him than examining his policies. What the BBC didn't anticipate was how quickly viewers would recognise and reject these tactics. As the interview progressed, social media began lighting up with comments supporting Farage and criticising Kuenssberg's approach. The BBC's strategy was backfiring in real time, with each interruption and dismissive remark only strengthening Farage's position as the outsider speaking truth to power. While social media erupted in Farage's favour, the most dangerous moment for the BBC establishment was yet to come. Immigration, labelled as toxic by media elites for years, became the battleground where Kuenssberg's carefully constructed narrative completely unravelled. Kuenssberg's approach was textbook establishment, frame reform, UK's immigration stance as beyond the pale, leveraging accusations like those from the National Education Union, whose General Secretary claimed there were an awful lot of racists who were getting involved in reform. This guilt by association tactic has silenced many politicians before, sending them scrambling to defend their character rather than their policies. But Farage wasn't playing by those rules. Instead of retreating, he confronted the economic reality head-on, presenting data that British viewers rarely encounter on BBC broadcasts. His revelation that GDP per capita had fallen in 6 of the last 8 quarters, coinciding precisely with record net legal migration, cut through the usual abstract debate. This wasn't about identity politics but economic mathematics, a framing that left Kuenssberg visibly uncomfortable. What truly distinguished Farage's approach was his direct connection to kitchen table concerns. While Kuenssberg posed theoretical questions about immigration policy, Farage spoke directly to viewers' lived experiences: the housing crisis affecting young families, hospital waiting times stretching into years, and infrastructure buckling under population pressure. Each point resonated with audiences who felt these impacts firsthand but rarely hear them acknowledged on mainstream broadcasts. The BBC's strategy collapsed in real time. Rather than appearing extreme, Farage articulated concerns shared by millions across Britain, regardless of political affiliation. His argument that mass immigration impacts the ability of young people to secure housing and access healthcare repositioned him as a pragmatic voice rather than the radical the BBC hoped to unveil. Kuenssberg's discomfort intensified as she attempted to regain control through interruptions and redirections. Yet with each attempt, she merely reinforced the growing viewer perception that the establishment media actively avoids honest conversation about immigration's economic impacts. When Farage angrily responded to the NEU's accusations, stating their leader was absolutely determined that our children should be poisoned at school, their minds should be poisoned about everything to do with this country, he positioned himself as defending traditional values against institutional bias. The contrast was stark: an interviewer armed with pre-packaged talking points versus a politician willing to address uncomfortable realities. Kuenssberg's questioning techniques, effective against conventional politicians, proved powerless against someone refusing to operate within the narrow parameters of acceptable discourse defined by media gatekeepers. The Farage-Kuenssberg clash reveals a fundamental power shift in British media dynamics. For decades, institutions like the BBC have served as gatekeepers, determining which political perspectives deserve airtime and legitimacy. That era is ending before our eyes. Farage's boycott of the BBC and his criticisms of their audience selection process highlight a growing rebellion against traditional media control. When audiences witness established interviewers struggling against outsider politicians who refuse to play by their rules, the spell breaks. Reform UK's growing support signals something profound. Voters are increasingly sceptical of media narratives and hungry for voices that address their concerns without establishment filters. The traditional media's monopoly on political legitimacy is crumbling, one confrontational interview at a time.